Hi, my name is Nolan Cox, and I am an Assistant Truck Director with Montana High Adventure Base, also known as MOHAB. What we're going to go through is gear for 1 or 2 week treks, regardless if this is for both. And specifically, this is going to be for pack rafting. However, the gear for normal trekking trips isn't that much different. So let's get into it. Feel free to follow along with the individual gear checklist that you can get from MOHAB's website. Very helpful to have. Highly recommend using it. That's what I'm going off of for today's video. First things first, Montana High Adventure Base operates ultralight backpacking and pack rafting treks. As such, the packing is slightly different than what you'd see on a normal or standard backpacking trip. The emphasis being that everything is lighter, there's less items, and the overall goal is to keep your overall gear weight down. The easiest way to bring down your total gear weight is to buy the lightest possible items that you can afford. Typically, the lighter they are, the less water the items will absorb, and the faster they dry, which is very helpful when you're doing something like a pack rafting trek, because you're going to get wet regardless, and you want your gear to dry out quickly. That way you're not stuck with all that extra water weight from waterlogged gear, essentially. We're going to start with clothing first. You're going to want a long sleeve hiking shirt. This is made out of polyester. Otherwise, nylon is a good choice. It can be a button-up shirt, it doesn't have to be. This isn't, per se, so that's totally up to you. Alright, next up, nylon trekking pants. So, big thing that you want to look for in a good pair of hiking pants is for them to be durable, as well as to have pockets. Pockets are just a helpful thing to have to stuff things in. Durability is especially big for the pants because the pants kind of get the most abuse out of all of the clothing. Next up is the synthetic underwear. Any kind of compression shorts, kind of synthetic polyester. Think tight. It'll help prevent chafing. More synthetic the material, less of water it's going to absorb, so it's going to dry out quickly, which is kind of what we want. Getting into socks, you'll have a minimum of 3 socks in total. You can bring 4 if you'd like. 2 of the socks will be your day-to-day socks. They'll get wet, however they'll also likely dry out. A 3rd pair of socks, they're your sleep socks. They stay dry the entire trip. That way you have something nice and warm to slip on at the end of the night. Moving on to shoes. This is where ultralight backpacking differs from normal backpacking in a very large way, in that what we're asking you to bring for your trek is not the standard hiking shoes that you might bring on like a Philmont kind of trek, but rather we're going to ask you to bring trail runners. Essentially just normal running shoes, except they're usually a bit lighter, and the soles, outer soles, are a lot more rugged and designed to take the abuse of like a dirt trail. We ask that you bring trail runners as opposed to normal hiking boots, just because of the guarantee that your shoes are going to get wet. Regardless if you're doing a pack rafting trek or a just trekking trip, there's likely going to be several creek crossings, possibly river crossings, and of course rain, possibly snow. All that kind of stuff can really make your shoes fully wet, turning them essentially into bathtubs, unless you have a non-waterproof, lightweight shoe such as these that'll dry out. Trail runners really are what we want from you guys in your treks, just because of the fact that they are much better with water. Next on my list is the cotton bandana. Always a versatile thing to have. Put around your neck, put around your head, use it as a rag. Just a good thing to have, just in case. Alternatively, if you're not a big fan of cotton bandanas, you can always bring a buff. buff is essentially a kind of synthetic mix cloth that's cylindrical in shape, and you can essentially wear it several different ways. It's a multi-use headwear. That's a good alternative to the bandana. So it's your choice in terms of that. Next up is going to be your cap. Standard baseball cap works just fine. This can be cotton. Next item, which I don't actually have here, is the whistle. It might not be obvious as to why we ask you to bring a whistle. So unfortunately a lot of people forget or they don't bring one because they're not really sure why they need it. The whistle is important for when we're on the water in the pack rafts to communicate with one another. We use whistle signals to pass back signals to warn of dangers ahead. It's just a lot more easier to hear than a voice over the sounds of rushing water. We ask that it be a P-less whistle because the ones with P's typically freeze when they get water in them. It does get cold at night, so what we're worried about is your whistle being frozen in the morning, that kind of thing. A good way to know if your whistle is P-less or not is to shake it. If there's something rattling inside, that's the P. If there's no rattle, then it's good to go. Next item is trekking poles, which are optional. Totally up to you whether or not you want to bring them. It's usually more of a preference thing. If you have a pair and you want to bring them, try hiking with them a couple times just to make sure that they are something that you want and that you don't find them cumbersome at all. It's good to just try them out first. Next item, sunglasses, as well as a retainer strap. Polarized sunglasses are the best bet. However, normal sunglasses are doable as well. Get the job done. What's really important though is the retainer strap, because these things fall off your face pretty easily without it, and if they fall off while you're on the river, they're gone. Next up is a compass. We have it listed on here that we only need 2 per crew. What we oftentimes do is we take a look at everybody on the crew's compasses and we kind of figure out who has the best quality ones, and we ask those 2 or so people to bring them with on the trip, and everybody else just leave theirs at base camp for the week. It's really important that the compasses your crew brings are good quality. They need to be a standalone compass, so not like attached to something like a trekking pole or otherwise, as well as they have to be movable on the inside so that you can take bearings, orient maps, essentially. Try to get a good quality compass, at least 2 per crew. If you're following along on the list, the next item says a lace possible stuff sack. I'm going to skip this for now and come back to it at a later time where we're going to talk about dry sacks and stuff sacks. So next up is a highly breathable wind shirt. This is another optional item. Essentially what this one's just getting at is kind of layers, especially if you're coming in like week 1 or 2. Temperatures can be a little bit colder during those times. Next up is the long underwear top. Acts as a nice little layer underneath. In terms of material, polyester is good. Polyester wool mix is probably a little bit better. Next up is the rain jacket. With the rain jacket, you really want to make sure this is a good quality rain jacket because this is probably one of the most important layers you're going to have and you're going to be using. I personally will wear my rain jacket for the majority of the week practically, not because it's raining per se, but just because it's a good insulating layer, easy on, easy off. Very helpful on the river because it keeps water out, keeps heat in. Making sure that you have a good quality rain jacket that's going to repel rain and keep you warm on the inside should be a priority. Next up is rain pants. I've met people who are big fans and people who don't see the point. I can understand where people are coming at when they don't really see the point to them. However, I kind of counter that with when you're on the river, sitting in your boat, you have water all around you, you have water in your boat, possibly, you have water falling if it's raining. Having these rain pants is very nice to have. Keeps you much more warmer when you're sitting in your boat on the water. So for that reason alone, I very much so recommend bringing rain pants in addition to your rain jacket. Next up, the hat and gloves. Fleece is wonderful, stays warm. Fleece dries really quickly too. Gloves are nice to have for in the morning when your hands are still really cold. Moving into some more of the gear as opposed to clothing, we're going to start with water bottles. So this is a platypus. We recommend that you bring 2 1 to 1.5 liter collapsible water bottles. Like I said, Platypus is a good brand, otherwise there's plenty others in the market now. The reason why I ask collapsible is mainly because they're so much lighter than say like a Nalgene, especially lighter than like an insulated Yeti or something. Nalgenes are still good, and we'll accept them if you bring a Nalgene or two. Some people will bring a Platypus that's 1 liter and a Nalgene that's 1 liter. 2 platypuses is usually a decent amount lighter. And really make sure you have at least 2 liters capacity of water that you can carry at any given time. 2.5, even possibly 3 can be better. Please do not bring hydration systems. So think the water tubes that are connected to your backpack, because they add a lot of extra weight and bulk, as well as they have a tendency to leak, unfortunately. Moving on to toiletries, what you bring is largely up to you. Make sure you bring personal meds if you need them. Toilet paper, what I'd recommend for toilet paper is that instead of bringing an entire roll, just kind of bring your own personal small amount. Take a roll of toilet paper and take some off. Of course, you can always bring a whole roll, shared amongst a couple people. Make sure as well with toiletries that the items are in small travel sizes, or that they're repackaged into smaller bottles. Keep in mind that you're only going to need enough for like a week, possibly 2. Next up is insect repellent. And this is another item where it could be helpful just to have a couple per crew, as everybody having their own. 2 or 3 per crew, depending on the size, can usually get by. Again, small travel size bottles are good. Next item, similar to the whistle, a lot of people won't bring an insect head net just because they're not really sure what it is or like why they need it. I'll tell you that an insect head net, I wasn't really sure if I needed one before I first came to MOHAB. I got one anyways because it was kind of cheap, and it is probably one of my favorite pieces of gear. At night, you can put this over your head and prevent any kind of mosquitoes or other bugs from flying around and bothering you. The shelters that we sleep in on trek do not have walls. Bugs can get in freely, so it's very helpful to have one of these to keep them out of your face. So next up, we're going to talk about first aid supplies. On the list, it has a recommendation of which items you can bring. Follow this list to a T. Don't bring more, don't bring less. Or take a moment to ask yourself, what am I likely to use over the course of the week? If you get frequent blisters, bringing your own moleskin, bringing your own tape can be very nice and very helpful, and definitely a good idea. Meanwhile, bringing like a dozen gauze pads and a whole bunch of more niche first aid equipment might not be super helpful unless you know you're going to need it. Really kind of ask yourself, what am I going to likely use over the course of the week? And just bring that. The staff members carry a full first aid kit among us, and that can cover anything that's like unexpected or out of the ordinary that happens to you over the trek. However, those kind of expected things like blisters, little cuts and scrapes, it's good to have a couple items if you know you're likely to get some of those. If you can fit it in a plastic bag, then it's pretty good. And if it's rather light, excellent. Next up is a headlamp. Headlamps are superior to flashlights just because you can keep it on your head. You don't need to do stuff. You can still have your hands free while you're setting up your tent or something. Make sure that you have an extra set of batteries just in case your headlamp dies over the course of the week or 2. Next up is a camera, which is optional. I'd recommend bringing a small compact camera, or otherwise if an adult just wants to bring a phone to take pictures, they're welcome to do that. Next up is the fire starting kit. Keep it basic, keep it simple, keep it small and light. I'd recommend these SBIT cubes. SBIT cubes are nice just because they're packaged in a waterproof container and they're small and light and burn pretty well. Alright, next up, one of the most important items is your backpack. With the backpack, keep it about 55 to 70 liters. Also make sure that your backpack is an internal frame. External frames typically are a lot more difficult for us to attach to the rafts, as well as they're more likely to become damaged when on the river, as well as unfortunately they're typically heavier. Next up, it states a durable pack liner. What I've seen people do in the past is they've ever used a very large dry bag that they just placed inside their empty backpack and that they then put items into. Otherwise, using a couple large, thick, durable trash bags is another option. Trash compactor bags work well. Otherwise, the alternative is compartmentalized with dry bags. as opposed to doing just one. What you can do is you can do it with several. So, talking about dry bags. This is a dry bag compression sack, particularly helpful for clothing as well as sleeping bags. A lot of those lighter, softer items that can be condensed work really well in here. Keeps them dry, and then you can also make them a lot smaller so you can fit more in your bag. Later in the gear list, it talks about a dry bag for your food. 20-25 liters is a very good amount. And then I'll also usually use a couple small dry bags to fit a lot of like my gear that I don't want to get wet. For instance, the fire starter kit, my first aid kit. So in order to keep your gear dry, there's 3 main strategies you can use. You can use one large dry bag. Alternatively, you can use several dry bags to compartmentalize. Otherwise, you can use a couple large trash bags. So next up, moving into sleeping items. Sleeping bags. 30-degree bag is usually the optimal, just because it's a good balance of weight to warmth. Down or synthetic are good, whatever your preference is really. Down usually packs down a lot smaller, however it's usually a lot more expensive than synthetic. Another item that's not on the list that I'd possibly recommend is a small blow-up camp pillow. Alternatively, you can always bundle up some clothing and use that as a pillow. Next up is the sleeping pad. With sleeping pads, it's really your choice whether you want to get a foam or a air pad. Air pads are the ones that you blow up by mouth. We ask that you don't bring any cots or any kind of large air mattresses. If you're looking to cut a little bit of weight, a good option is to get half or 2/3 length sizes. Not all pads come in this size. Or another option is to get a kid's size pad. What I have here is a torso-sized foam pad that I use. It's a lot lighter and a lot smaller. Next up is the ground cloth, which I do not have here. This can be a lot of different things depending on what you have on hand or what you like to use, like a lightweight ground tarp. Alternatively, painter's plastic works, Mylar emergency blanket, Tyvek. Make sure with the ground cloth that it's cut down to a personal size. So it lists here 2.5 feet by 7 feet, works pretty well. Next up is the long underwear bottoms. So this is another thermal layer that you're going to use to keep you warm. Polyester or polyester wool mix works very nicely. Next up it talks about a light jacket or fleece. What you're looking for really is something lightweight and layerable. So you can wear it underneath a rain jacket and it'll still fit well. Just something that you can put underneath to be a little bit warmer. We're going to move down to the bowl. So with the bowl, my personal favorite is Tupperware. It's light, fairly durable, get a size that holds enough food. 3 cups is a good minimum to have. Alternatively, a lot more expensive, however definitely a lot more durable and nice, is titanium. A nice titanium bowl. Aluminum also could be a good option. And then the other option are these collapsible style. Sea Summit makes a lot of these. The big thing with bowls is that I'm not sure, I don't think it's listed here, is to have a lid. A lid is very helpful for when you're rehydrating the food that you're going to be eating for breakfast and dinner. The way we cook is with dried, freeze-dried, and dehydrated materials. And we disperse the dry materials and then disperse boiling water to everybody in their bowls, and we all sit for about 5 minutes and let the food reconstitute. Having a lid speeds up that process, gives you a nice even cook, and keeps your meal warmer for longer. So a bowl that's at least 3 cups and a lid to go with it. Next up is the utensil. Very important that it's durable. Probably the item that I see break the most on treks are these little light my fire plastic utensils. Please don't bring them, they're gonna break. What I recommend is to get something a lot more durable. This is a titanium spork made by Sea Summit. This is the extra long version, which can be very helpful for when you're trying to stir your meal in like a large bowl. Another gear item is the journal and pen. While it is usually optional, journal can be very nice to write down memories, interesting happenings, day-to-day events. Typically, people who bring journals and use them are very glad they did by the end of the trip. just because then they can always look back at the memories they made and get back in the moment. For trail snacks, it lists some ideas on the gear list. You can also do some Google searches. Make sure you're keeping it light and highly caloric. What we're going for here is give you as much energy and fuel as possible. And it's also good to keep in mind what's going to be satisfying to you personally. When I'm looking to get my lunch items for the treks, I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to open up and be like, ooh, I forgot I had that for lunch today. I'm very excited to eat that. So you really want to make sure that you have items that you enjoy eating and that you're going to look forward to. Another food item, hot drinks. So think tea, cocoa, instant coffee. You can also bring our little soup packets, like dried soup. I think Lipton makes a couple. You just add hot water. In terms of prohibited items, MOHAB prohibits electronics, including watches, electronic compasses, odometers, personal gaming devices, music players, e-books, e-book readers, cell phones, and GPS devices. A couple caveats with that though. Watches, it can be good to have one or two on the track. Usually some of the guides will carry a watch just to keep track of things. Of course, if you're taking a medication that needs to be at a certain time, please do bring a watch. With cell phones, we talked a little bit before about using cell phones for pictures. That's perfectly alright. And the other thing with GPS devices, you do not need to bring GPS devices. The staff members, we carry 2 different GPS devices to keep in contact with base camp. For other prohibited items, alcohol, drugs, tobacco, firearms, and illegal items, standard BSA protocols. I'm going to skip front country stuff for a moment and go to additional items for pack rafting specific treks. If you're pack rafting, you need to bring a helmet. Another optional item is to bring a fishing pole. Fly fishing pole is really great. Fly fishing in general in Montana and the area we're in is pretty stellar. And we'll talk to you more about Montana licensure when you come to base camp. If you're on a pack rafting trip specifically, you'll need a helmet. Any kind of helmet, whether it's bicycles, skateboarding, climbing, whitewater, kayaking, any of those will work. Snowboarding helmets can get a little bit warm, so probably not bring one of those. Another item that's good to have that's actually not on the list here that I recommend are camp shoes. So any kind of lightweight kind of sandal or something that you can slip into when you get in camp to let your feet breathe and give them sort of a rest from your hiking shoes works pretty well. Cheap Crocs work really well. Flip-flops, however with flip-flops you run into the risk of them breaking pretty easily, which can be unfortunate, but definitely an option. And something I definitely recommend is camp shoes. Another item that I recommend you bring that isn't on the list are a couple of light-duty carabiners. These can be very helpful for attaching things to your backpack. Last section of items we're going to talk about are front country stuff. So besides all of your backcountry items, it's good to have the following items for when you're at base camp as well as traveling to and from MOHAB. So Class A uniform, Class B scout shirt, or scout pants, an extra pair of shorts, some clean socks, an extra pair of shoes, things like some gym shoes just to walk around in, something comfy, your toiletries, deodorant, soap, comb and brush, shampoo, body wash, a small duffel bag or a backpack to carry all these items in, and then $25 to $50 cash for all of your incidental spending, so meals on the way to and from, as well as meals or items for the trading post. We do open up the trading post when you guys return back from your week-long trek, and there's a lot of good items in there. And then lastly, paper copies of your BSA medical forms. They have to be current, and I'm sure Steven or whoever's in charge will email you guys about that. In addition, your paper copies of your swim test form for the pack rafting trek. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully I was able to answer some of your questions and lingering thoughts regarding gear for the trip. Of course, if you still have questions, please feel free to email us. We're happy to respond and offer any kind of suggestions. We can give you gear tips, possibly some items that you might want to consider, that kind of thing. To close it out, we're really looking forward to have you and your crew come out and spend summer with us. Hopefully by the end of the trek, we will look back and remember this amazing opportunity you guys had for the rest of your lives. Thank you.